This episode is made possible by Shankspace. When you need a prison shank, and you need one now, turn to the good people at Shankspace. And as promised, we have returned. And I'm sure you all remember the medieval torture device from the last video. Now, in order to reduce swell, we have had the signatures under pressure for about 24 hours, and we did get them to confess. So the great thing is we now know who killed the Lindbergh baby. Turns out it was FDR. He would get out of that wheelchair at night and just run about and murder people. All right, as always, it is important to keep the orientation so we know where the top is. And we can chuck this away for a minute. And let's also get rid of the clamps, although I do love them. They're beautiful. Where did I go? Oh, I'm back. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this bookbinder's thread, and this is pre-waxed. It helps it slide through. Some people like to just buy the thread normally and wax it with beeswax. That seems like a lot of work to me. I'd probably screw that up. I'm trimming the end of it so it fits through the needle more easily. And here you can see me counting out 7 arms lengths. Now, I have short arms, but I would still not recommend 7 arms lengths for most beginners. You're going to wind up with a lot of extra string, even though this is Coptic double stitch, so it's going to kind of be in half. It'll go through twice, but or you'll see. But anyway, you're going to wind up with a lot of this on the floor if it's this long. So I would recommend you stick to 4 if you're new. I like to use 7 because I know 7 will take me to about the 5th signature of a 10 signature book, and that's where I like to tie it off. These are the needles we'll be using. We will be using curved needles, and you'll see why we'll be using curved needles. And I wish I had filmed this a little differently so you could see me using the magnifying glass. Use a magnifying glass to thread your needle. All right, as said, this is Coptic double stitch. So I thread it through the needle, get the 2 ends evened out, and then I tie that off in a double knot. All right, everybody, this is about where you're going to want to pull your chair a little bit closer to the monitor. We are going to take the bottom, remember, the bottom cover. That's the one where we have the full moon in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to take the bottom cover, and we're going to take the last signature. Remember, we're always going to be pulling from the bottom here. And we're going to line that up nicely. Then we're going to move some stuff out of the way. Give us some room. We're going to take the curved needle. Here's, we want to move in very, very close, folks. Take the curved needle. We are going to pass it through the bottom hole in the first signature. And this is why we use wax thread. We're going to pull it through. We use all of our might. And you want to be very careful that your thread, and this is why I recommend using maybe 4 arms lengths instead of 7, doesn't get caught on anything. Here you see it snags on the table. You just flip that up through, but if you're new to it, that can cause panic. All right, make sure that comes in there, and you'll see that eyes up nicely, and it's not going to get pulled through. It's a nice big knot there. Now, this is how I do my stitching. First, I have to pull my needle up from the floor. If you have pets or kids, lock the door. Besides, your bookbinding time should be private anyway. All right? You don't want them playing around with the sharp needle. We're going to go in through the bottom. Okay, there we go. Needle is poking out. Now you're beginning to see why we use the curved needles. I'm going to pull that through, and why we use wax thread. And it's important, and you'll see me using, in this case, my finger as sort of a spindle. I want to make sure that this thread stays nice and even. All right, here you're going to see I come out to the right of that stitch. Pull it nice and tight. Fish the needle up off the floor. And I'm going to go in on the left side of that stitch. And I'm going to come out the other side. Curved needles make this very easy. Imagine doing all this stuff with a straight needle. And as you'll see as we go along, that would be a nightmare. And here I'm using my lovely deformed thumb as a spindle. And if you don't have deformed thumbs, you have normal thumbs, it'll still work. Sometimes those are called hammer thumbs, but I like the fact they're also called murder thumbs in some places. I have murder thumbs. And so does Megan Fox. We both have brachiodocoly. All right, we're going to go back in through that hole for that first signature. Now, this is tricky. You don't want to come poking through the knot because sometimes that can cause a bit of a nightmare, but you do want to go back in through that hole and into the first signature, and you want to go in here and check it. So pretty soon, you'll be able to see if I just push this forward a little bit more, and you want to make sure you are in the middle signature, or in the middle of the signature. And here it comes. It's going to look a bit like John Hurt in Alien, when the alien popped out of his chest. All right, here we go. It's not going through the knot. Sometimes you'll come out in the middle of that knot, and that is a nightmare. You can work it out, but it ain't pleasant. All right. Getting back to making sure everything is nice and even. And using my spindle thumb. There's my spindle thumb. Currently, I guess, scratching my nose with it. We're going to pull this nice and tight. Yay, see how tight that is? Now we're going to go through the second hole, counting up from the bottom, just because I want to show you folks how to do that again. Occasionally I'll be watching an instructional video and they're like, do it like this, and then they jump ahead. All right, in through the second hole. Pull it through, and again, this is why we're using waxed thread. And we're just going to make sure that everything stays nice and even. We don't want one side of the double stitch to get longer than the other side. Then you got to go down to the needle, you got to straighten it out. It just becomes a little bit of a nightmare. But if you do a couple of books, you get this method down. All right, pull that tight. Fold it over. Fish the thread off the floor. Coming in from the bottom as before. Now you will probably end up at some point poking your needle into a signature. Everybody does it. Tiny little needle holes are the hallmark of handmade goods. Here we go. It's poking through. Want to be very careful here. I'm going to pull that through so it comes out to the right of the stitch, and you'll see that in a second. Here we go. And like the last time, we're going to loop around to the left. And we're going to pull that through. And the more thread you have, the longer you'll pull. There I am, making sure that those two are even. And nice and tight. I can see it's tight on the inside. And we're going to go back in through that hole, second hole up from the bottom in the first signature, where we came out of, once we fish the thread off the floor. The curved needles always make me think of the movie Candyman, the original with Tony Todd. He's good. He's great in that film. All right, pulling the thread through and making sure that it stays untangled and even. You want to make sure your thread doesn't get tangled up. You want to make sure it stays even, and you want to keep your top and bottom of your book oriented. You only have 3 things to do. 4 if you count not poking yourself. Okay, and we're going to go back in, make sure it's nice and tight. Oh yeah, here I'm actually going to fish out the ends, they're sort of loose ends, and I'm going to trim those just to make it look nice and neat. Some people will put a little dab of crazy glue on the knot just to make sure it stays secure. I don't do that. It's a double knot. That'll be fine. But if you want to use a little bit of crazy glue, who am I to tell you not to? All right, out through the third hole. Pull that tight. Now we're going to see what will happen eventually when we get to the end of the first signature. Okay, we've reached the end of the first signature, and we're tying it off just like before. To the right, then loop around to the left, but this is where we normally pass back through the hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach down here, again, always taking from the bottom and moving up. We're going to take that signature, and we are going to, of course, fish the thread off the floor. And that needle is going to travel into the first or the top hole on the second signature and pull that through. Now, don't worry if some people say, well, will that knot still be secure, or will that bit of linkage be secure? It will be. As you add signatures, you'll be coming back up from the bottom and looping around there, so it'll be fine. Okay, there we can see, yeah, it's in there. Hooray! And we're just going to go down to the second hole from the top, and we're going to repeat the process that you saw before with a little variation, and we will talk about that. Yes, we see. It's doing the John Hurt and Alien. Okay, see, I'm trying really hard here not to let this get tangled up, and you can see how that can happen. It really, really, really wants to become a mess. That's the whole thing about what there's a thing called knot theory that says that there's a million ways for a piece of string to get all tangled up, but only one way for a piece to be straight. So we're really bringing order to chaos here. So we've solved the whole Limburg baby thing, and now we've moved on to knot theory. All right, I'm about to do a thing I call the 2 down, 1 up. So I'm going to now go 2 down, 2 signatures down. So that will bring me to the signature between the cover and the first signature, to the space between those two. And I'm going to push that through. And again, this is why we use curved needles. They say Sid Vicious tried to move over to curved needles towards the end. Maybe that's why he's no longer with us. Pull this nice and tight, and you're about to see why I call it the 2 down, 1 up. Now I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go between signature 1 and signature 2. And again, this will be going in from the left. So we're doing that out to the right, loop around, and then back up on the left. Back and to the left. I don't know if you saw JFK or not. Not a great film. Best part of that film is when Sissy Spacek says, "You care more about John F. Kennedy than your own family." All right, here we go, tightening that up. And we're going to pass back through that hole, just like we did before. And we're going to repeat the whole process, until we reach, either run out of thread, or we reach the middle signature, which should be about the same time. The middle signature is the 5th signature. In the last video, that's the one I put that awesome ivy paper in the middle of. All right, so here we go. We go through there. That looks nice and tight. Yeah. We can now move forward with this mess. Okay, speeding things up a little bit. Okay, this Well, this is signature 4, if you're counting. If you got all excited and thought it was going to be signature 5, well, this is signature 5. Now here, you can see that I've reached the top hole on signature 5, and I don't have a whole lot of thread left. If you don't have a whole lot of thread left, you're going to want to tie off your thread. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pass it through that top hole. So normally we'd be stacking another signature on top, passing it through that hole, but no, since we're getting low on thread, and since we're at signature number 5 in the middle of the book, we're going to pass it through, loop it under that bit of binding right there, and we're going to tie it off. I could have been a surgeon. I missed my calling. And I'm going to do a double knot here just to make sure it's secure. All right, and again, some people like to use a bit of crazy glue to secure that knot. I'm pretty sure it'll be safe. All right, time to start the process all over again with the last 5 signatures. Yay, only like 35 more holes to do. All right, so we have reached signature number 10. Now, when I do signature number 9, I take signature number 10 and I take the top cover, making sure it's oriented, and slap that down on there. All right, this gets a little tricky. I'm going to take the thread, pass it through the top of the top cover. And you'll see signature number 10 is below it. Not really tethered to anything at this point. Now, I'm going to do a 2 down, 1 up. But it's going to be a little different. I'm going to go in between signatures number 8 and 9. And you'll see the thread coming out to the right. Tie that down. And now I'm going to go back in from the left as before, but I'm going to be going back in between signature number 10 and the cover. Actually, I'm coming in between signatures number 9 and 10. That's what I meant to do. All right, so it's still the 2 down, 1 up. And this gets a little tricky. We're going to go back in through that bottom hole on signature number 10. You want to make sure you're in the middle of the signature. And there you can see the needle is popping out. Pulling it nice and tight. Make sure nobody breaks in and steals it. Well, that was a slick move. All right, in through the second hole. And I'm pulling out here now between that second hole, coming out through the second hole, and it's going to actually be coming out between signature number 10 and the cover. And up and in through the top of the cover. And we got to make sure this is really snug. And here you'll see I kind of screwed up, and I ran the thread through, almost making a knot, so I'm going to have to pull that out. It's not a major mistake, and I caught it because I was using my thumbs as a spindle. All right, that's nice and tight. And we're going to go down. 2 down, we're going to go down to number 8. Between 8 and 9, signatures 8 and 9. And again, coming out to the right of that stitch. And here, this time, I will be going between signature number 10 and the cover. I think this little variation often gives it a little more strength in the stitch. You, of course, can proceed however you want. And this is always the trickiest part, because you got to get it back through that hole. And just finding that with all that stitching in there can be a nightmare. I oftentimes have the nightmare where I'm stitching a book and I wake up and I'm in college and they've changed all my classes around and I'm in my pajamas. All right, pulling that nice and tight. There we go. Yay. Okay, we have reached the final hole, the final step on this book. And we are stitching this up. And I like to tie these off on the outside, on the binding. And that's because I'm a rebel. I don't play by the rules. There we go. Making this nice and tight. Yes. And we're going to clip that. Normally you say, wow, we're done. Oh, but there's much, much more that we will be doing with this book. We have to customize it. Put the thread away for a second. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the book. And I'm also going to put the guide back in to make sure that I keep it oriented. That will be very important as we move along. All right, we're going to put it back into the medieval torture device because when we started sewing in all that binding, we added a lot of swell to the book, and we want to smush that down. Now, we added so much swell to the book that we can't use those cool little clamps right now. We're going to have to use these big ones. Fortunately, I have a bit of a background in woodworking, so my house is just filled with these. I decorate with them. If you're having a wedding or bar mitzvah, you're probably going to get some clamps from me as a present. There's so many of them laying around here. I have to re-gift them regularly. And we'll get another confession out of the book. Confess! And I smushed it down enough that I can actually add one of those cool little clamps right now. And we're going to end up letting this thing sit for anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And you say, what do I do during that time? Well, I sit and I watch it. I never take my eyes off of it. Okay, we have compressed the book. And it's time to customize it. Let's open it up and have a quick look. Yeah, we can see all those stitches on the front cover are hitting over by the 3/4 moons. And look, up in the corner is the full moon in the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner. I didn't see it, of that book. And we are going to add one of my custom or not custom, but signature psychedelic sunburst designs. And the way I came up with being able to make them psychedelic was I was watching another video where somebody was making something and they were putting a stencil on something and it as they said, they screwed it up. I thought it looked better. I gave it a really awesome psychedelic quality. If you're doing a regular stencil, I guess you would take and this is the way I do it when I want to make something nice and neat. I take my sponge brush and I dab it a few times on paper towel, get the excess paint off. But here we want all the excess paint because we want something that we don't know what the hell it's going to look like when we're done. There should always be an element of surprise in your work. That's why I have somebody hide behind a door and while I'm working just regularly jump out and yell surprise. Okay, we're coming up on the moment of truth. Let's sit for a little bit. Here we go. We're going to find out whether or not it's going to look what I call good, but somebody else might call, oh my God. Gingerly removing the tape. Like an old horror movie where they slowly take the bandages off somebody's face. Oh, here we go. Popped up a little bit, but that's perfect. Yes. Yes. I'm very happy with that. So happy, I'm going to let it sit for a bit, and here I am adding the filigree, or I call them filigree. I don't know if there's a proper name for these things. Basically little brass pieces I put up in the corner of the book. And if you're using crazy glue, like I am in this instance, please wear a pair of work gloves. You don't want to glue your fingers together. And we're just going to add those. Should be exciting for those of you who've never seen anyone crazy glue anything. Or not crazy glue. What do we call it? We call it super glue, because that's not, again, like you can't call a Ouija board. It's got to be called a spirit board. Okay, here we go. Putting that on there. Nice and tight. I should have put a piece of paper under there just to keep any glue from hitting the facing page. All right, here we go. We are now going to add the book plate. Now, these book plates are made by a local artist, goes by the name of KWT Designs. I'm also using Moss Distress ink. I don't know how I fell upon Distress ink, but I was glad that I did. I just like the name. And we're going to press the book plate from KWT. And I'll put a link up to the KWT site. We're going to put that all over that awesome Moss Distressed ink. Rub it all, get it on there. All right, there we go. That's what the book plate will look like. I want to make sure I get it in the corners. Okay, here we go. We're going to press this against the book. And let's pull it up and have a look. Oh, another moment of truth worked out. Yes. Ex Libris from the Library of. Now, since this book is going to be for a green witch, I'm going to take this sponge and some more Distress ink. Now, I have not tested this, so this will be a first. So I'm hoping I'll be happy. But the idea is to give it kind of a weird, mossed-over, natural look. As if someone had left the book out in the rain. And they'll never have the recipe again. Oh, no. All right, as I put this on, I realize I'm pretty damn happy with this. It's giving it a really super weird quality, and I like that. Yay! And here she is, the final version. With the psychedelic sunburst, the filigree, the mossed out facing page. We can see the stitching over here hitting at the top of the 3/4 moon. It's so mossy. You have to ask yourself, how much mossier could it get? It can't get any mossier. And let's go check out the middle of the book where we should have, yes, there it is. It's where we tied it off earlier, and there's that incredible ivy. And at the back side of the book, we can see that the stitching is coming in right on the full moon. Well, I'm pretty happy with this project, and it is time to give this book a home. I'm going to pull it up a little closer to the camera so you can enjoy it before it says goodbye. And I'll say goodbye. Thank you all very much for watching this.